His Excellency the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys. A very good evening to you all. I am delighted to be here. When Dr. Jayawardena asked me to make a presentation on the selected theme, I was wondering what I could potentially do that would be of use and that I could literally only speak for 20 minutes. And so what I thought is that I will look at the opportunities that the Qatar Vision would present to all construction professionals and how we as quantity surveyors would be able to benefit from this. Okay? So let's first of all appreciate what we mean by Qatar Vision. Well, the stated definition is as follows. It says that it's the comprehensive development of the nation of Qatar and its people. And it's built on 4 foundations. So there is the human element, there is the economic development, there is the social development, and the environmental development. Let's sort of look at 2 of these foundations. In particular, let's concentrate on the economic element, in particular the construction element within that. I was looking at the data for the latest years, and I found that for the last year, 2014, the total volume of construction for Qatar is about $17.5 billion. And if you look at the last 5 years, this sort of represents about 8.35 compound annual growth. Now this is significant given the size of the country and its population. Now if we were to extrapolate this into the fruition of the Qatar Vision in 2030, we are looking at a figure of something like $60 billion worth of work. Now that is very, very significant. And if I were to use footballing terminology, that is massive. So if you take the cumulative value between now and 2030, that represents something like $500 billion worth of construction work. Just take a moment to digest that. $500 billion worth of work in a country that is rather confined, that's small, concentrated. And it's also the case that with respect to human development, the stated ambition is to make sure that everybody, both expat and the homegrown community, have access to educational programs for lifelong learning. I think these 2 ingredients present you all with a unique opportunity, and I just want to sort of explain and spend a few minutes as to how we might go about it. And I think in particular it's quite useful sort of to think about the changes that's taking place within the construction industry, and in particular the changes that's undergoing within our profession. And then I'll talk a little bit about as to how to put all this together. Now in understanding as to how our profession can change, I think it's quite useful to sort of think about where we've come from. Now it's reputed that the earliest forms of quantity surveyors began soon after the reconstruction efforts of the Great London Fire in 1666. So we've had a long tradition, and initially we were very good at counting. That's essentially what we did. We counted bricks, and we were essentially number crunchers. And this was more or less the status quo. And about 45 years ago, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors tried to sort of define what we do and what we were good at. And what they identified was that our core competency was all about measurement and valuation. And what that enabled us to do was to be the sort of the accountants of the construction industry. In particular, it enabled us to forecast, to analyze, to plan, and to have control of costs within the construction industry. Fast forward another 2 more decades, in the 1990s, the RICS defined what we do as the profession's unique skill base that combines what we already know in terms of valuation and also extend it into procurement and cost management. So if I were to sort of give a snapshot of what we do, I'm going to sort of maybe sort of divide it into sort of three groups, so to speak. On one hand, we do the contract management element, the management of contracts. So that includes dispute resolution, arbitration, and so on and so forth. Then comes the core of what we do. So in terms of value management, the number crunching bit, which we are very good at and which we've retained. And we also sort of extend that into sort of project management and so on and so forth. And there is the other element, the increasing infrastructure projects whereby there is design and build, where we lend our expertise. So these are sort of perhaps the three groups of work that we could sort of potentially put labels around. Now, although we've moved along these lines, our depth, or in other words, that the quantity survey is sort of surplus to requirements, has been a theme that has been, running, it's been undercurrent for quite a long time. As much as 125 years ago, in the Building magazine, this is a quotation that I picked up. It says that the quantity surveyor is not a necessity in order of things. Any convenient and cheap method of multiplying drawings and specifications and placing copies in the hands of each estimator would answer the same purpose and get rid of the QS for good. And so that we are no longer required has been a theme that has been going on for a very long time. But we are here and we are thriving. And the reason why we've been able to do so is because we are extremely flexible. We've always been able to leverage our core competencies and take use of the opportunities that's presented to us. And I think we are at the crossroads again, whereby the environment is changing and we need to exercise our unique ability to be very skillful, to be very adept at what we do. So, what are these two sort of really big issues that I identify? I think, number one, the industry is changing. In particular, I identify the blurring of the traditional boundaries within the various stakeholders in the building industry. And secondly, what information technology is doing to the construction sector and what its implications. So let's look at these two in turn. Now, this is the typical project arrangement in the sense that you have the owner or the client, however you call it. You've got the designer or the consultants, and you've got the contractors. Now, if you look at the standard conditions of contract, what it is very good at is to draw very good boundaries amongst the various stakeholders. Why does it do that? Well, because the rights of each stakeholder needs to be protected. So what it really does is that parties are almost put against each other. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that when you put people against each other, what really happens is that there are inefficiencies built up. I think moving forward, given the pressures that we have, it's not conducive for us to sort of have these boundaries and walls around us. We need to integrate, we need to come together. We need to utilize our skills of all the stakeholders so that construction projects finish on time, on budget, and everybody gets a very good return on their on their investment. So that's number one. The second undercurrent that I observe is what information technology in particular is doing to the construction sector. I'm thinking about building information management, information. So essentially what we're doing is we are modeling buildings through information. So this represents a sea change in the way we think about buildings. So the way we go about procuring buildings, making buildings is changing. Building components are thought of as objects. So we no longer think about bricks, but we think about entire floors, for example, entire roofs, and so on and so forth. So this represents a sea change in the way we go about our business. So this obviously means that what we as quantity surveyors do would need to change. So what are these roles that we are going to occupy? Could it be that we become information managers of the construction industry? How would the contract management change in light of BIM and in light of this integration that I'm talking about? So I think there's a whole new era of procurement, and it is happening to a certain extent. Even now, there might be some of you in this audience who probably has these titles. And I think what this signifies is that we continue to adopt and we continue to be flexible. And finally, how does one take advantage of all these changes, and how does one position themselves so that they can best get the best of what's out there? I think what we need to do is to develop a personal development plan. Now this might sound very complicated, but it's asked two very simple questions. The first is, you need to take a stock of where we are now. So you take literally an audit of yourself. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the particular opportunities that are presented in the industry as a whole? And, sorry. Okay, so what are the opportunities within the organization that I work? And what are the potential threats within the organization and outside the organization? So essentially sort of taking stock of where you are. And then the next step is to understand or to make a promise to yourself, so to speak, where you want to go. So you set yourself an objective. Where do I want to get to? And that might be a long-term objective. For example, a typical objective might be that in 5 years' time I want to double my salary. That's a perfectly valid objective. And in order to do that, in order to double my salary, what do I need to do? So what are the skills, the qualifications, actions that I need to undertake? Now in order to understand the skills and the qualifications and action that I need to undertake, I think it would be quite useful if you can sort of get this framework into play. What we refer to as a SWOT analysis. It's very simple, just 4 quadrants. So remember, I identified those 4 things: the strengths, the weaknesses, the threats, and opportunities. The strengths and the weaknesses are very much within your control. So for example, let's say a particular strength that you might have is that you have good educational qualifications. You have, say, 20 years of experience. So those are very much positives. So what are the weaknesses? It might be that maybe you have not very good at soft skills. So in other words, you're not very good at building relationships with colleagues, with other stakeholders in construction projects. So that's a weakness that you need to work on. Maybe you're not very good at juggling lots of things. Perhaps your time management is not very good. So that could be a potential weakness. A potential threat could be that because of all the opportunities that are out there, apart from quantity surveyors themselves, it might be that other construction industry professionals are lining up to take these opportunities that are in the marketplace. So that's a threat. And the opportunity is what we've been talking about, in the sense that there's a very significant volume of construction work that's going to come on stream in the next few years. So you identify your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then what you do is, you need the real smart element of this is to try and convert those weaknesses into a strength. So if people skills were something that you identified as being a weakness, you work on it. You work on it. You undertake activities that enable you to get rid of that weakness or mitigate that weakness. And once that's done, then you are able to match your strengths with the opportunities in the marketplace. So, just to sum up, what I earnestly ask you to consider is to take stock of the fact that the industry that you are working in represents a very significant opportunity, perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There are lots of undercurrents. It is to your advantage to understand what these undercurrents represent and align yourself so that you take the best advantages of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for that thought-provoking presentation, sharing your wealth of experience and giving everybody food for thought. Everybody, put your hands together for our very special guest speaker. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know it's not very easy organizing a very successful event such as this. A lot of hard work has to be put in. I was made to understand when I had a very special interview with the President. He confirmed that there was teamwork and everybody worked with commitment, passion, and dedication. So this is ample testimony for what we see here today. So everybody, I'd like you to put your hands together and give the members a well-deserved round of applause, the committee members. Let's hear it. And this is your moment. I'd like all of you to stand up. And we'd like to recognize each of you. Stand where, you just have to stand from where you are when I mention your names, right? Let's first recognize the President, Dr. Chandana Jala. Please stand up to be recognized. No stranger to all of you. Because everybody is doing dedicated work and they are in different places. Let's also recognize the Vice President, Mr. Mushtaq A. Rashid. There he is, everybody. Let's hear it. The General Secretary, Mr. Nirojan Sahayaratnaraja. The Assistant Secretary, Ranjit Priyanka Arachige. Also the Treasurer, Mr. Tennyson Gunasinghe. Where's Tennyson? Also, the Assistant Treasurer, Vasanta Edurisinghe. Right, there is Vasanta. You as well, a member coordinator in Amila H. Pereira. We also recognize the CPD coordinator in Pathum Chamara. Shanti, we have more people?
Yes, of course. The collective efforts had been made by these gentlemen as well. So the Sports Secretary, Kantasamy Kokulan, and followed by the other members of the committee members, Toyal Arachige, is he around? Amal Fernando, another committee member, Amila Sumanasinghe, Upul Ranaveda. Okay, he's there. Nuwan Vikramasinghe. Nuwan, are you around? Upul Chandima Subasena. There are few more committee members as well. That is Kaushalya Gangani, the female SLQS member. All right. And Dinusha Samaranayaka, Suchira Ratnayaka, and finally Mahesh Masinghe.
Everybody, let's hear it.